Not bad, not bad. 7:29 p.m. I made it. I thought I was going to be a little bit late, but no. I made it. I made it. Look at that. That's 7:29. We're gonna start this live stream really soon. Before that, of course, first and foremost, let me just check to make sure that my video specs are all okay, that the video and the audio are fine. Of course, first and foremost, let me just check to make sure that everything seems to be all right. I'm going to start a live stream in about 2-3 minutes. If I were you, I would really use these 2-3 minutes to actually read the description of this video, because as you guys probably realize, I am going to be giving a very informative live stream this evening. So the format is going to be a little bit different, and different than my other live streams that I have done, in the past. This live stream is going to be on the channel after completion, okay? So please, if you're here right now, just make sure to read the description of the video. Tonight we're going to talk about sunfish / panfish / bass, right? Which, if you want to talk from an ichthyology perspective, we're going to talk about the species of fish in the Centrarchidae family. So before that, let me just check here what is going on. So we got some people here in the Google Hangouts chat box. That is great. For the people who are joining in right now, I would like to make this clear, right? I will answer questions at the end of the live stream, only after the discussion portion of this video. And that is because the amount of information that I'm giving out in this live stream tonight is like so much that by that time, a lot of your questions may already have been answered, you see? So I don't want to get to the questions, right, before I give out all the information. Otherwise, I would just be redundant here on the live stream, all right? So anyways, you may be asking me first and foremost, why is it that I decided to do a live stream when it comes to the Centrarchidae family, right? And the thing is, I just get so many questions every week on my social media, here on YouTube, right? I get comments here on YouTube. On Instagram, I get DMs every week. And then you got Snapchat, I get snaps every day. Emails at my email, sheng12182527@gmail.com. So every week, just think it this way, right? As a multi-species angler, every week from all around the country, I just got people coming to me and asking me usually the same questions, right? Over and over and over again. Oh, Leo, what should I use around my area to catch largemouth bass? Oh, Leo, I see some panfish in my local body of water, but I'm not able to catch them. What should I do? Oh, Leo, it is a spring right now, and I want to catch this specific species of fish. I'm not having any luck. What should I tie on, right? So I get those questions every week. So it came to a point that I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do a live stream. I'm going to talk about all these things. And then if I get questions about these in the future, I am just going to use the live stream as a reference. And that's why I decided today, actually, I didn't decide this today. I had this in the back of my mind for quite a while. I decided to create what I call the lecture series, right? That is why in the title of the video right now, there's an L1. This is going to be a series of live streams that are going to be available here on the YouTube platform. And when people ask me a certain question, and the answer is already in the live stream, I just gonna give the live stream to them and say, go and watch it, son, and learn. Okay? So, all right, let's get this live stream started. I have talked enough. We are going to do a Q&A at the end of this live stream. So I will get to the Google Hangouts chat box after the discussion portion. I mentioned that already. First and foremost, let's just go over the description of the video together, right? So we have an idea of what exactly are we talking about here when we say the Centrarchidae family. And if you go to the description of the video and you scroll down, I gotta go through all of these, right? But when you go to the description of the video and you scroll down, it says right there that there are a total of 38, I'm sorry, there's a total of 38 species in the Centrarchidae family. And out of those 38 species, so far, extreme fillet fishing was able to catch only 16. So there are a few remarks that I would like to give here to the description of the video, right? Let's go through each species. This is gonna be really fast, just like a 5 minutes type of thing, right? So just bear with me. If you are reading the description with me, you know exactly where I am at. Let's start from the top, okay? Members of the Centrarchidae family, right? We got the Centrarchidae-Acantharcus, that is the mud sunfish. I talked about the species of fish just in one of my videos, right? I think it was like, what, 2 videos ago on the channel, the one about the pine barrens. Then we got the Centrarchidae-Centrarchinae-Centrarchus. There's only one there, the Flier. We got the Centrarchidae-Centrarchinae-Enneachantus, right? In there, we got the black-banded sunfish, the blue-spotted sunfish, and the banded sunfish, which I also mentioned in my pine barrens video just recently here on the channel. We got this one you guys should be well familiar with, right? We got the Centrarchidae-Centrarchinae-Enneachantus, and you got 2 species in there, the black crappie, that is the nigromaculatus, and the white crappie, the annularis. It's all around the country. I think in the south, they call it the sacalage or sacalage. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but it's a well-known species, right, in this group of fish. Then we got the Centrarchidae-Centrarchinae-Arcopletis. There's only one fish in this branch, and that is the Sacramento perch. If you never heard about it, I recommend you to go out there and Google it up. It is an endangered species of fish in California, and there's only, like I said, one fish in that bracket of the whole family, right? Continuing, we got the Centrarchidae-Centrarchinae-Arcopletini-Ambloplitis. You guys should be well familiar with this one as well, because just recently in one of my live streams, I caught one of the members, right, of this genus. In there, we got the shadow bass, the rock bass, the Roanoke bass, and the Ozark bass. And just recently, I got a bunch of rock bass in one of my live streams, right? That would be the Ambloplitis rupestris. Going down to the last 2, that's when you have the 2 branches of the Centrarchidae family that are most well known to anglers in the United States of America and all around the world. I would like to give a few remarks over here because there are a few new things that were established in one of the branches that not a lot of people know about, so I want to talk about it, and that is this branch right here, the Centrarchidae-Lepominae. You see, we have switched. We are not in the Centrarchinae branch anymore. We switched to the Lepominae, right? So Centrarchidae-Lepominae macropterus, which is pretty much the bass genus. We got the smallmouth bass, the spotted bass, the shoal bass, the red-eye bass, the Suwannee bass, the Guadalupe bass, largemouth bass, Florida largemouth, Alabama bass, Cahaba bass, Chattahoochee bass, Tallapoosa bass, warrior bass. We got so many bass. And this is, by the way, right, this is the branch that I would like to give a little bit of remark, because I would like to point out that the 4 last species that I have noted in this branch, they are all new species of bass that were discovered only in 2013. In other words, you know, when you talk about bass in the fishing community, right, out there, for folks who don't know so much about ichthyology, folks who don't know about the terminology and binomial nomenclature, folks usually only know about the largemouth bass, the smallmouth bass, the spotted bass. Maybe some of them will know about the red-eye bass, you know, or you talk about the Suwannee bass, right? But you talk about those last 4, you see what I'm saying? Like the Cahaba bass is like unheard of in the community, you know, the Chattahoochee bass. And there's another one here that is called the warrior bass. Like, when did you hear, or in this live stream, someone tell you that he caught something called a warrior bass? So all of these 4 fish, you know, they're all new. They have been identified as a separate species in 2013, and then they have been added here to the branch, right, inside the family Centrarchidae. I would like to point that out. Even if you go to Wikipedia right now, 2018, April 21st, which is today, Wikipedia hasn't updated. Wikipedia hasn't updated its branch yet. Okay, I don't know what's going on over there, but there are more species, you know, than what Wikipedia shows there. Okay, and finally, the last group that we have here is the Centrarchidae, Lepominae, Lepomis, and if you guys don't know this one, I don't know what to tell you, because the Dink Master over here catches these all the time, right? We got the orange spotted sunfish, the bluegill warmouth, bantam sunfish, green sunfish, red breast sunfish, dollar sunfish, northern sunfish, long-eared sunfish, pumpkin seed, red-eared sunfish, spotted sunfish, and red spotted sunfish. So that makes a total of 38 species of fish in the Centrarchidae family, and this is what we're going to be talking about in this live stream. Every time I talk about a topic in this live stream, I would like to point out, always keep those species in your head. Not all of them, of course, but the ones that you want to target and the ones that you would assimilate to the topic that we're talking with here in this live stream, right? You got to realize that extreme fillet fishing, being based here in Philadelphia and doing multi-species, I can't really teach you guys out there via live stream how to catch fish in my local bodies of water, because it doesn't work that way. I could tell you how to catch fish in the Pennypack Creek, but you go somewhere else, circumstances change, maybe you wouldn't be able to catch fish. And that's why in this live stream, just like my other educational live streams, I need to keep things as general as possible, so that when you get this information that I am putting out there, it doesn't matter where you are around the country, it doesn't matter where you are around the world, you should be able to apply that knowledge to catch some fish, right? Which is why I would like to emphasize this series of lectures, live stream lectures on the channel, are going to be very philosophical in a certain sense. But if you follow them and you watch them and you learn from them, you are going to get, you know, a lot of benefit from it, right? Because it is the type of information that I am putting out here in these live streams that really makes an angler, well, let's just say that the amount of information that you will get will put you ahead of the game when it comes to folks out there who don't want to study about these things, okay? So in this live stream, I decided to revolve all the topics that I'm going to talk about when it comes to the Centrarchidae family around two main questions. Why? Because those are the two questions that I get the most here on my social media. And the first question that people always ask me, doesn't matter where it is, okay, is what should I use for them? We're going to talk about this later in this live stream, okay? That's the first question. People always come to extreme fillet fishing. Doesn't matter where you are around the country, right? You are targeting one of those 38 species of fish down there. They come to me and they ask me, Leo, what should I use for them? And then the second question that I get the most on my social media when it comes to the Centrarchidae family is, Leo, I see the fish. They are there, but I can't catch the fish. So what should I do? What should I do to actually catch these fish? So these are the two main questions that I want you guys to keep in your head, in your mind, all the time throughout the length of this live stream. Because as I give you guys the information, as I talk about this topic, the Centrarchidae, you should always ask yourself, right? What should I use for them? Okay. And if I'm not able to catch fish, then what? What should I do? So taking all of that in consideration, we are going to talk a little bit about fish behavior in this video, okay? It is my understanding that if you go out there to target a certain species of fish, before even wetting your line, you should know at least a little bit about what exactly is it that you are targeting, right? So one of those 38 species of fish down there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about fishing gear, because that is, of course, fundamental to catch this fish. It is a fishing channel, right? And you are fishing for them. You ain't got to go out there and net them, right? You got to try to catch them on hook and line. So we do need to talk a little bit about gear and the specifics when it comes to fishing equipment. And finally, I am going to provide you guys more towards the end of the live stream with some advanced techniques. And I would like to point out right now in this live stream that these advanced techniques are, things that I have figured out mostly myself, all right, after reading a bunch of books and doing a lot of research. So this is something that you usually don't see in the books, all right? So that is something that will benefit you a lot if you learn about that. But before we talk about all of these topics, I do need to talk a little bit about the scientific method, all right? I would like to get you introduced to the scientific method here in this live stream for all future live streams that are going to come on the channel. It is, and why is that? That's because the scientific method is extremely important for anglers out there. You may not realize it, okay? But if you're an angler and you fish out there, you are kind of like a scientist. Okay, you may not have a college degree when it comes to fishing. You may never have to take courses, right, that will teach you how to fish, right, and all those things. But every time you are out there, every time you are observing something, every time you are doing some type of experimentation, and most importantly, every time a question comes to your mind, a question that is related to the sport of fishing, you are playing your role over there as a scientist. And in order for you to become a better angler, just overall, you have to be acquainted with the scientific method. Now, to talk about the scientific method is to talk about a bunch of different philosophers and scientists that have surfaced over the years, over the generations, right, who have been great advocates for the scientific method. We are not going to talk about all of that because if we did, this live stream would never end. But we do need to pick one individual to focus on. So I decided to pick Sir Francis Bacon. Folks who know about history, folks who know about philosophy, know about Sir Francis Bacon. We are going to talk a little bit about him. He lived during the age of the Enlightenment. If you guys, and I hope you guys still remember a little bit of history, but if you guys ever had history in the past, it doesn't matter which country you are from, you should have learned a little bit about the age of the Enlightenment, right, which happened in Europe in the 18th century. If I am not wrong, that was followed, right? The Enlightenment followed the age of the Renaissance, that was from the 14th century to the 17th century, right? So we will talk a little bit about that in this portion of the live stream and get to the scientific method. Oh, as a side note, just one little fun piece of information though, right? For those who are not familiar, the Renaissance, which happened between the 1400s and the 14th century to 17th century, it was during the Renaissance that one of my favorite drawings were actually drawn. I think it was at the beginning of the 1500s. You guys can Google it up. You guys can check it out if you have never seen it before. It is a drawing by Raphael Sanzio, and it is called The School of Athens. It is a beautiful drawing, let me tell you that much, okay? It's got all philosophers in the drawing. It's got Aristotle and Plato in the center, right? Plato is holding his trusted book, the Timaeus, which translates as dialogues, right? And Aristotle is also holding his trusted book, the Nicomachean Ethics. And the drawing also has so many other philosophers in it, right? Socrates, Euclid, Pythagoras, Epicurus, etc., right? So if you have never checked that drawing, this is just a side piece of knowledge. Go check it out because it is a beautiful drawing, all right? But all right, let's talk a little bit about the scientific method. The scientific method, right, of Sir Francis Bacon. By the way, Sir Francis Bacon was a big advocate of the scientific method, right? He called it the empirical method back in the days, and there's even this branch of philosophy just called the empiricism that we're going to talk about. And I sure hope you guys know what I'm talking about here, just for you guys to have an idea, right? Maybe you guys are a little bit rusty when it comes to history, but the age of the Enlightenment was what they call the age of reason, right? And it was during that time in history in Europe, and hopefully you learned this in school. That's when you study about a lot of important guys, right? I mean, have you guys ever heard of René Descartes? Come on, you guys have heard about René Descartes before, right? cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am, right? I mean, I think so I exist. Have you guys ever heard about Jean-Jacques Rousseau? I hope you guys have heard about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right? He was the dude who talked about the social contract, that a government cannot govern people if people do not want to be governed by a government. So in other words, there is always a contract between the government and people, right? It was during the time of the Enlightenment that people learned about John Locke and the idea of the blank board. I mean, come on, you heard about that before, right? The blank board, every human being is born equal without pre-existing knowledge. And after that, it is all nature and nurture. It is all about the experiences that you get to experience and the things that you learn who define who you are, right? And it is around that time that you learn about Sir Francis Bacon, the dude who came out and was a big advocate for the scientific method. So what exactly is the scientific method, and why exactly is it so important for anglers to know that they are indeed doing the scientific method, right? Let me tell you something. The difference between your average angler and anglers who really succeed in the sport and catch more fish is the fact that they know that they are taking the sport as a science. Okay, in quotes, right? I say the sport as a science, but in quotes. Folks who just go out there and they don't seek that knowledge, or they don't understand exactly what they're doing, they will still get to enjoy the sport. They will still get to get fish, but they will not beat the dude who knows about the scientific method, is doing the scientific method, and is always striving to become a better angler day by day. So the scientific method is fairly simple. It is divided pretty much in 3 steps. The first step is to make an educated guess about something. We call that the hypothesis. I mean, have you ever gone out there on the river, on the lake, or somewhere where you fish, right? And suddenly a question just popped in your head? I mean, come on. This happens to every angler, right? You go down there, and there may be a day that you just see absolutely no fish around, and you just ask yourself, holy cow, where are all these fish, right? Or it may be the complete opposite. There may be days that you go to your local body of water, right? You see all the fish in front of you, but they don't bite. So you just keep asking yourself, dang it, I keep putting my lure, my bait right there. Why is the fish not biting? And when you start asking yourself questions, you start to formulate educated guesses. You start to formulate hypotheses. I think there's no fish over here right now because this place is shallow and it is cold. So maybe the fish are, I don't know, in deeper parts of this body of water. That is your hypothesis, right? In the other situation, maybe you look at the fish and you may just guess, I think the fish are not biting because they are not hungry. So that is your hypothesis. That is the first step of the scientific method. And then from the first step, after you have a hypothesis, you jump to the second step, which is observation and experimentation. Now it is your job to go out there and find out if what you think is true or not. It is really that simple. So, if you think there's no fish in the shallows because they're in the deep water, because the weather is cold, how exactly do you find out? Well, hell yeah, you just go to the deeper portions of the place where you were fishing, and you start throwing lures and bait, and you see if you can catch fish. You can even be unfair, right? I call it unfair. It's not really unfair, but you can really be unfair and use technology. You have all kinds of sonars nowadays. Run your boat a little bit or your kayak a little bit above, right? See what's on the sonar, and you see the fish there. And through a set of observations and experimentation, you find out if that is true or not. And in the end, if that turns out to be true, oh, look at that. Today, I caught a bunch of fish in the deep portions. They were not in the shallows because the water's cold, right? And you have tested this in many different environments under different sets of variables. Then it goes to the third step. It becomes what is called a theory. It is really that simple. And sometimes things don't work out your way, though. Sometimes you have a hypothesis, right? There's fish right in front of me, but they're not biting. I think it is because they're not hungry. And you go out there to test your hypothesis, right? How do you test your hypothesis? I don't know. You throw some food down there in the water and you see if the fish are going to eat. And then you start to realize, man, the food that I threw down there, they're not eating. But that may be that my hypothesis is right. They're not biting because they're not hungry. And then you may try putting some baits or some lures in front of their faces, right? And then you start to get what is called contradictions, right? You threw the food down there, the fish didn't eat. And then you threw the lure right in front of its face. And after a little while, the fish actually bit on it. And then you get confused. So is the fish hungry or is the fish not hungry? And that's when you start to realize that there may be other variables into play. And after you do your observations, your experimentation, right, which of course may take a long time to accomplish, you can reach the result of the theory that, oh, the fish were not really hungry. What happened is that they were spawning. And when those fish are spawning, they're not focused on eating. They're focused on protecting their nests. But if you put your lure or your bait in front of their faces for a long amount of time, or you put something down there that makes the fish think that that something is a threat to their children, right, their baby, they will bite on it. Then it becomes a theory. So you see, it is extremely important for anglers to always go out there and think about the scientific method. You do it on a daily basis. Maybe you just didn't know the name, right? But anglers, us anglers, we're also scientists. We're always going out there. And at the end of the day, we have more questions than answers. All right? So now that you know what the scientific method is, and I have covered the philosophy and the history behind it, finally in this live stream, I think we are, I don't even know how many minutes we are in, right? Maybe about 30 minutes. But finally, we can start talking a little bit about the Centrarchidae family here, the species within the Centrarchidae family, and we can finally get to the two questions that I have imposed to you guys at the beginning of this live stream, right? And remember, once again, the first question was, what should I use for them? I'm trying to be as general as possible. So when I ask, when you ask yourself that question, right? When I ask you that question, what should I use for them? I'm talking about one of the 38 species in the description of this video. And the second question is, okay, so I am having trouble catching them, Leo. What should I do? Once again, right? Keep in mind the scientific method, and keep in mind we're talking about one of the 38 species in this live stream, okay? In order for me to answer those two questions, which I get so much on my social media, the first thing that I need to talk about is fish behavior. Fish behavior is extremely important. I have always told my multi-species anglers and my life lister friends and everyone else out there that fishing doesn't start by getting your line wet in the water. Fishing starts at home, right? If you guys follow my other live stream where I talked about the hunter-gatherer process with anticipation, expectation, and gratification, you guys know that fishing starts at the process of anticipation, which is research. And that is extremely important. So what exactly are you targeting out of the 38 fishes down there? I don't know. But if you are targeting one of them, you should know a little bit about its behavior. And when it comes to fish behavior, there are three things that you need to take into consideration. These three things are extremely important. The first one is feeding and habitat. The second one is the time of the year that you are going to target these fish. And the third one is the human impact on the species of fish that you want to catch. We will talk about all three of them before we talk about the questions that we're going to answer. So first and foremost, habitat and feeding behavior. If you guys ever had a fish tank, I mean, now I can say in this live stream, even if you didn't have a fish tank, you can just watch so many fish tank videos here on the YouTube platform, right? So I mean, if you guys have a fish tank, You can observe the behavior of fish in that fish tank. And you will come to realize one day that there's one spot in that fish tank where the fish really, really likes to stay at. And you could call that spot his home. It could be under a piece of cover, it could be around a piece of structure, or hell, it could be just right in the middle of the water column, Who knows, right? Around a little current break. But that is the spot that the fish would call home. It is the spot that once it is at nighttime, that fish just stays down there and just doesn't do anything, right? It feels like the fish is sleeping. The fish is just there. And then that fish during the daytime will move to another spot sometimes. Or maybe we'll walk, or maybe we will swim around the fish tank, right? Maybe we'll go to other places to look for food. That is the feeding grounds. As you can see, the fish tank is nothing but a small ecosystem, right? Where, of course, the fish is your pet and you sustain the fish, right? This is a human-fish relationship. But you can really get that ecosystem, that small ecosystem, which is the fish tank, and you can apply the same ideology to bigger ecosystems. So when we talk about your local reservoir, your local lake, your local pond, your local stream, your local canal, always think of feeding and habitat. When you go somewhere to target one of those 38 species, the first thing that you should ask yourself is, where do you think that fish lives? And where do you think that fish feeds? Once you are able to answer these questions, you will find the fish. So keep that in mind, okay? And when it comes to the species down in the list, right, I can say that some species down there, they like to live around pieces of structure. For example, we have the green sunfish, the Lepomis cyanellus, loves to live around pieces of wood, sunken wood, or rocks. We got a fish of the Ambloplitis genus, same thing, right? The rock bass, the Ambloplitis rupestris. Right? Why do you think it's called a rock bass? Because you're gonna find it around pieces of sand? No, right? You're gonna find it around rock. It's called a rock bass for a reason. It is always around rocky areas, and usually it lives in the little fringes that the rocks have. You have some other species that like to live around the weeds. If you watch the last YouTube video here on the channel, right, not the one I published today, but 2 days ago, you saw that the Enneachantus fish right there, the black-banded sunfish, holy cow, it loves to go in and out of the weeds, right? And then there's also the feeding areas. Where exactly these fish feed, right? Well, the fish that like to live around a structure, around cover, they will probably follow an ambush strategy, right? And this is extremely important, because if you know about this, all you need to do is jiggle your worm or your lure around a piece of structure or around a piece of cover. And if you have polarized lenses and you're fishing somewhere shallow, you can even see the fish coming out of the cover to get your stuff, right? Have you ever had that moment in your life? I hope so. Have you ever had that moment in your life that you're just somewhere on your local body of water and you just put your lure right around the edges of some weedy areas, and then a huge bass or just a bass comes out, swings at it, and goes back? This is what I'm talking about right here. As far as you know where the fish lives and where it feeds, you are going to find fish. And there's a connection between the habitat and the feeding. And what is that? That is that the fish will never, ever be too far away from its home, unless it is a migratory species of fish. But I can promise you that out of the 38 species in the description of the video, there are no migratory species of fish. So all those 38 species down there, they will always be around its home. If you can find that one piece of structure where that fish lives, that one piece of cover where that fish lives, that fish will be around that general area. Second thing that I told you guys that you guys need to know when it comes to fish behavior is what time of the year you are targeting this fish. This is a question that has plagued anglers and scientists for years, for centuries, right? And thankfully, due to the scientific method and a lot of research, and a lot of research papers, right? When folks have come out with these terms that it makes everything easier for us. Well, first and foremost, they realized that it really depended on water temperature, you know. So different seasons of the year, fish behave differently. This is just how it is. It is the truth, right? And then working on that assumption, they started to study fish more and more in the realm of ichthyology. And finally, they came out with these three words that we use a lot in the fishing community nowadays, which is pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. So when I said to you guys, oh, you gotta always think before targeting those fish, right? What time of the year it is. I'm not talking about spring, summer, fall, winter. I'm talking about, is your fish, your species, one of the 38 down there, in pre-spawn right now? Or is that fish spawning right now? Or is the fish done spawning and in post-spawn? And back in the days, there used to be another terminology during the winter time that people would add to it, right? It used to be pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, and then hibernation. But as I have covered before in one of my previous live streams and even on my blog post, fish can't really hibernate, right? Generalizing. There are few very rare exceptions to that, and that is because fish, right, when talking to biology, they are ectothermic beings. They're not endothermic, and only endothermic beings can hibernate. Ectothermic beings cannot, right? And ectothermic beings, as you guys know, are creatures, organisms who don't produce their own source of heat. So if the water temperature is 35 degrees Fahrenheit, the fish is going to be very close to its body temperature is going to be very close to 35 Fahrenheit too. And that's why during the winter time, they don't really enter a stage of hibernation. They enter what is called a stage of torpor. That means that during the winter, they move very, very little, but they don't hibernate. See? During portions of the day, they may move a little bit here and there. They may get a little bit active here and there, but for most of the time, they're going to remain lethargic. They're not going to feed, and they're just going to be staying there where they are. But going back to the topic, going back to the topic, it is always important. It is crucial for you to know if the fish are pre-spawn, spawn, or post-spawn, right? And you know, this is like a story. This is really like a fairy tale kind of thing. You know, this is how I think it in my head. All right, always doesn't matter which species it is. Winter is gone, all right, or fall is gone, depending on the species. But one season is gone, and the water temperature starts to change. And then the certain fish species finally realizes, man, it is the beginning of a new cycle. And somehow they just get, you know, horny, you know, they just, hey man, I need to make babies, you know. And this is then the pre-spawn season starts. A lot of feeding, folks, a lot of feeding, a lot of preparation, because they need to get fat, they need to get chubby, they need to have that energy, right, to give birth to new life. This doesn't apply just for fish. This applies to everyone, right? Human beings, 9 months. I mean, woman, you know. Have you ever, you know? So it is how that works, right? That's why it doesn't matter which species you target down there. When it is pre-spawn, you just know they're gonna be feeding. They're gonna be feeding a lot for most species out there, generalizing. Then spawning season comes, and thankfully we are talking about the Centrarchidae family. All these fish in this family, they like to build what is called a nest, you know, and it is a weird kind of thing, right? The fish goes in, prepares a little round circle, gets all the vegetation out of there, which is why if you have polarized lenses and you look at the shallow areas when they're spawning, you can see a circle down there in the water, right? Because the fish has removed all the vegetation from the top of it. So it is just gravel, sand, or even mud, the things that they need to lay their eggs over there. And it is during the spawning season that these fish, they don't eat anymore. They are focused 100% in giving birth to the new fish, the younger generations. And that's why, right, I actually gave you guys an example when talking about the scientific method. That is why when anglers fish, for example, for batting bass, which is a member of the Centrarchidae family, they tend to punch lures in front of their faces to annoy the hell out of them until they bite. Or you can follow the approach, right, of intimidating them by punching something there that will make them believe that is going to eat their eggs. A little salamander, a little fish imitation. But this is how it works, right? Fish change their behavior completely when they enter the spawning mode. They're not hungry anymore. They're not concerned about the food. They want to protect what is right there under them. And that's why they attack out of aggression. They are very territorial during that time of the year. Finally, after the spawning season, you got the post spawn. I call that the party time, the fun time. It is like the fish has done everything that it had to do for this year. My job's done. I already gave, I already did what I had to do. I got laid. The eggs are there. Maybe my kids are swimming around. Now I can just go out there and have fun, you know. And that is the time of the year for the Centrarchidae family, right, where fish get extremely aggressive, water temperatures get extremely high, and that's the fun time of the year to create wild YouTube videos because you just know that those fish will be biting all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Remember, they are ectothermic. So as water temperatures get higher, right, they get less and less lethargy. They get extremely active. You can start catching bass on some 3D bat lure, right? You can even make some crazy ass challenges. It is the post spawn time. It is fun for the fish and for human beings. All right. So that is the second thing to cover when it comes to behavior. We covered already the feeding and the habitat, and we cover now pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. The third thing and final thing you need to take in consideration when it comes to fishing behavior is the human impact on the fish. There are days that you go down there to fish at your local bodies of water, and something is just odd. That happened to me before, and hopefully that has happened to you before. You can't figure out what is wrong with that fish. It is not a spawning season. The fish is just behaving very weird. You can see the fish right there, but it's not biting or anything. And even when you put the stuff right in front of its face and you try to make it super angry to bite, that fish is still not committing. And that may be due to human impact. I am talking about fishing pressure and catch photo release. This is the thing that a lot of people tend to forget. When you study the behavior of the fish that you want to catch, you can't just consider the natural things that happen to them. You also need to consider the human impact. What if that fish has been already caught today? This is the question that you always need to ask yourself. I'm out here fishing. I'm here at this spot. Am I going to catch fish? Well, it depends. Were you the first one who went out there on the lake this morning? Because if you were, your chances of catching fish are going to be maximized. But let's say it is a weekend. It is a lake where a lot of people come fishing at, and you just arrived at the lake 4 p.m. You see a lot of boats out there. You see a lot of people fishing out there. What happens to your chances of catching fish? Even if you are using the same lures that those people were using, right? It decreases drastically, right? And that is because when we talk about fishing pressure, the higher the fishing pressure is, harder it is to catch those fish. When someone releases a fish right there, there is a stage of time that the fish goes through to recover, right? You fight the fish builds lactic acid on its body, it goes back, it gets traumatized from the fight. It all sounds really bad, right? But the fish needs a time to recover. And that is the time where the fish is not going to bite again. Similarly, if folks practice a lot of catch photo release, we are talking more about the topic of evolution now. Fish have knowledge now that it didn't have previously. The fish has saw things, has seen things, right? That it didn't know about it before. And that makes the fish's instinct even sharper than before. And that is what we define, right, when it comes to the Centrarchidae family, especially the largemouth bass, as finicky fish. Imagine if you were on planet Earth, all right, just eating a sandwich. This sounds so Aerosmith, you're just eating a sandwich, and then suddenly you get pulled to space, all right, by your sandwich, and suddenly you see an alien pulling you online, right? And you got a hook in your mouth, and you are experiencing all these things that you have never seen before. You can't breathe. You are in space, my friend, but somehow you are still alive. It's all new to you, but you are in fear. But the alien tells you something. Somehow you can understand it, right? And it tells you, I'm going to put you back. I'm going to bring you back to the place that you were before, but you are not going to forget this experience. Holy cow, that would be traumatizing, right? And I mean, people could look at this little, story right here and say, man, if this happened to me, I would probably die on the long term. I wouldn't be able to handle it, right? So people can interpret this as something negative. But on the other hand, just think it this way. When you went back to planet Earth, you would have knowledge that no other human being had ever, right? Something unique has happened to you. And because of that, your instincts, your intelligence just became higher than everyone else around you, just because you have that extra bit of knowledge. And this is exactly what happens to fish, folks. A lot of people criticize anglers out there for catch photo release. They say when you catch and release the fish, you're just playing with the fish's feelings, All those PETA folks out there saying that it is a negative thing for the fish. You're traumatizing the fish, right? I beg to differ. I beg to differ. If you catch and release a carp 20 times, it's going to be 20 times harder to catch the fish. Self-preservation. The carp has seen things that the other fish haven't seen yet. And that is why it is harder to catch the fish. And that's why bass anglers, right? Again, talking about the bass in the Centrarchidae family. Bass anglers sometimes tell you, oh, son, you go out on your local lake, try to throw something a little bit different that the fish haven't seen before. Because if you keep throwing that Senko and the fish has bit the Senko before, has gone out of the water, returned to the water multiple times, right? The instinct, all right, it learns about it. It learns in a different way, but it learns about it. So these are the three topics that I wanted to cover when it comes to fish behavior. And this all happens way before you go out there in the water and you target one of these 38 species of fish in the description of the video. Before you put your line out there in the water, you got to do your research. You got to know about the habitat, where they live, what exactly do they feed on, and where they feed. You got to know about the season of the year and water temperature. Is it pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, right? How lethargic are they? You got to know about the human impact. How pressured is the body of water where I am going to? Do people practice CPR a lot over there? When you take all of these things in consideration before you step out of your house, I guarantee you 100% as a scientist, as a physicist who graduated from Temple University, all right, you will catch more fish. You will catch more fish than the average Joe down there. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use Joe, right? I mean, than the average, no names, okay? Than the average dude out there who doesn't think twice about going out there to fish. Because you will be on a higher level. You will have stepped your game up. You will have leveled up. So you will catch more fish. You guys understand that? So, all right, now that we already covered the scientific method and we covered the behavior of the fish, finally, we are going to start answering the questions that I imposed in this live stream. So let's get started with the first question here. If you guys have any questions related to the things that I spoke about, I'm going to read some comments in the Google Hangouts chat box, but I will get back to answering those two questions real quick, okay? And by the way, I hope you guys understand also why is it that I am not reading comments from the Google Hangouts chat box when I'm doing this live stream. As I told you guys, this live stream is going to be on the channel for future references, right? When people ask me these questions, I need to cover all the information in the live stream before I can go to the Q&A. Otherwise, people will watch this live stream later and just be like, well, Leo, where is the bit of information that I'm looking for, right? I can't really give the guys, the number of minutes in the live stream, okay? So I see here some good comments over here. EPF is on his game tonight. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. As I said, I will only answer, topic-related questions. You know what? Let's just leave the Q&A for after I cover everything. I think that's a better idea, so we can kind of fool around for a little bit, right? So let's just go back to the lecture and let me finish all the information part of it. Yeah, that would be better. So for those who came late, or for those who started watching the live stream at a later time, what we have covered so far in this live stream is, number one, we read the description of the video together, and we went over the 38 species in the Centrarchidae family, which is pretty much the species of fish that we're talking about tonight in this live stream. I have emphasized to folks in the live stream tonight that I am trying to be as general as possible so that all the bits of knowledge that I'm giving out here are universal, meaning that if you learn the things in this live stream, you will be able to apply to your local bodies of water. We covered a little bit of the scientific method. I gave folks a brief summary of, the end of the Renaissance and the beginning of the Enlightenment, and we talked a little bit about Sir Francis Bacon and the scientific method. What exactly is the scientific method, right? The hypothesis, the experimentation, and then the turn of hypothesis to a thesis. And then after that, we talked about the behavior of fish, right? I emphasize to people that if they want to target one of the 38 species in the description of the video, the first thing that they need to do before even wetting their lines in the water is to do some research and understand how exactly is it that those fish behave. And we talked about the topic, excuse me, we talked about the topic of where those fish feed and where they live. We talked about the topic of what time of the year you want to target those fish. Is it pre-spawn, spawn, or post-spawn? And we talked a little bit about human impact, right? Fishing pressure and CPR, and how that impacts the fish, right? And its behavior. So now, in the live stream, we're going to start answering the questions that I have imposed to you guys at the beginning of the live stream. And the first one is, what should I use for them? So, okay. Let's say that you have chosen to pursue one of the species down in this list of 38 species in the Centrarchidae family, and you have a question now. How is it that I'm supposed to catch it? I already know about the behavior of the fish. I already covered all the research. All that I need to do now, you are past the stage of anticipation, right? And you're moving to the stage of expectation. So now you're just going to your local bodies of water. You are trying different things, and you want to catch that fish. Now, this is the part that we need to talk a little bit about fishing gear. And let's just divide all these 38 species, right, generally by 3 different categories. So, excuse me, I'm going to divide them into bass, which are the accepted game fish, with them all the different species here in the Centrarchidae family. And then we have the panfish, all right, which are the smaller species that will still bite on an assortment of lures on live bait. And finally, we're going to get that last group and put it into the division of microfish, which are the species that they don't grow very big, right? So you need to use very specialized techniques to catch those fish. So we got now a game fish division, once again, that would be the bass. And then you got a panfish division, which would be like in the middle, the intermediate. And finally, you got the small division, which is the microfishing. Taking the behavior of the fish in consideration and right, just general fishing gear information, the bass, I mean, come on. The bass would just take any lure, all sorts of presentations. The bass is notorious for going after things, right, that don't even look like natural organisms. A lot of people will go out there and just tell you match the hatch. So when you research about the feeding behaviors of the fish and where they feed, you should have come upon your research. What exactly is it that the fish eat around your area? So that would be the main question, right? What exactly is it that the bass eat around your area? Is it eating shad? Is there shad around your area? Is it eating crawfish? Is there crawfish around your area? And then if it's not eating those two, what is it eating? Is it eating flies in the streams? And believe it or not, some of the species of bass that I have noted to you guys previously in this live stream, they really, really do eat bugs a lot. I'm talking about small bugs. And that's because those fish, they live in streams and they behave like trout does, especially some of the new ones that were identified in 2013. They don't get very big in size, right? They just stay in the streams around the current breaks, just like the trout does. And once a bug flows down, they go up and they get it. So as you guys can see, when it comes to the fishing gear, the presentation, the rig, and the lure, you got to consider a huge range of variables for these bass. You got to consider where exactly is it that you are fishing at. Are you fishing somewhere with current or without current? Are you fishing? How deep are you going over there? After you take all of those things in consideration, right, you will probably come to the conclusion that the bass overall as a game fish will take a huge range of lures that, of course, I am not going to cover in this live stream, and it will also take live bait, right? And the arsenal of lures, everything that you have ever heard out there is game, all right? Even the weirdest things that you have heard. You can go with a Ned rig, you can go with a little crawfish on a football jig, you can do some drop shot with the robo worm, you can run a whopper plopper, right? Or just a regular popper on top of the water. You can use a daredevil spoon in the creeks. You can do whatever you want. If those bass are aggressive and they want to feed, they will feed. Now, it is a different story when it comes to the panfish. The panfish, not only they're smaller in size in comparison to the bass, the feeding pattern of the panfish is quite different. If the bass are 10 out of 10 in terms of being aggressive, the panfish, you have to slow down a little bit, right? Not to mention that you also need to take in consideration the sizes of the mouth of the fish. This is how you adapt the size of the lure or the bait that you are using to the fish that you are targeting. So for example, in terms of panfish, in the Centrarchidae family, we got some species of panfish that have huge mouths. We have the mud sunfish that has a huge mouth. We have the green sunfish and the warmouth that have a huge mouth. You have a species of sunfish that have, I would call, an intermediate mouth. Is not too small and not too big. For example, the red breast sunfish. But overall, compared to the largemouth bass, I mean, we're trying to compare like totally different things. So when you are catching the panfish out there, you must adapt your gear to the size of the fish, but not only the size of the fish, the mouth of the fish, okay? If you use some outrageous lures for panfishing out there, but you are targeting crappie, the mouth of the crappie can get pretty big. So he will be able to eat those lures, right? Especially depending on what time of the year you are targeting those fish, which we covered already, right, in the behavior portion of this live stream. But if you are, for example, trying to target a bantam sunfish, all right? If you're trying to target a sunfish that is a little bit on the smaller side and the mouth is not so big, you gotta make sure to adapt the pound of the test line and the hook and everything else, right? So that those fish will be able to inhale that. One thing that I didn't talk about in this live stream yet that I would like to also emphasize, was that on my phone? Well, I'll check later. But one thing that I didn't talk about in this live stream yet that I would want to emphasize, right, when it comes to the bass, the panfish, and the microfish, is that you should also be careful with your presentation and also try to keep it as finesse as possible, especially if you take in consideration what we have discussed in the behavior portion of this video, right, about fishing pressure and catch photo release. You want to make sure to keep things as finesse as possible. So I will leave that in your hands, all right? I don't necessarily need to give you all the specifications for the line that you need to use, what pound test line, and what size. You choose the species and you adapt to it, right? But when it comes to panfish, different than bass, I would, however, recommend more live bait than lures. Or if you're using lures on the smaller side, right? If you follow me here on the YouTube platform, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the trout magnet or a 164-ounce jig. Sometimes even get a little ice jig, right? And put something a little bit smaller. Finally, we got the bass and the panfish, we got the micro species, right? Let's say you go out there and you want to target the dollar sunfish, the Lepomis marginatus. Or you go out there and you do what extreme fillet fishing did a few days ago in the Pine Barrens, and you saw a bunch of black-banded sunfish that were 1.5 inches long, and you want to catch those fish, right? Because, I don't know, you are a multi-species angler, you are a life lister, you want to include that species in your arsenal. What do? That's the time that you should throw away all lures for microfishing, no lures, all right? And just use live bait. Try to keep your presentation to a minimum. I'm talking about, size 18 hook and above. A lot of people ask me questions about this, right? Size 18 hook and above, sometimes size 24, sometimes size 30. And then if the fish are really, really small, I always recommend folks to get a half owner Tanago hooks that comes nailed already. Hyperlink is always in the description of my videos, okay? But to target those small fish, it is usually one split shot, right? Depending on where you put that line, one split shot, and then the hook. With one tiny piece of lure, once again, you need to take in consideration the size of its mouth. You can't put a piece of, worm that is too big. Otherwise, the microfish won't be able to eat it. I always have a pair of scissors with me to trim the bait. You put the bait on the smallest hook that you possibly have. You gotta trim it around the edges so that when the fish goes there and gets the bait, you can actually hook it up, all right? So when it comes to the gear portion of this video, I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. It is not about specifics. And I hope you understood that. It is not about the brands that you use. I don't care what brand you use, Casking, Shimano, Daiwa. I don't care what line you use, Try to keep things as simple and finesse as possible because, as we discussed previously, there may be a lot of fishing pressure and catch photo release around your area. Try to always adapt your lures to the size of the mouth of fish that you want to catch. If you are going out there for warmouth, you can tie on like 2-inch lures and the warmouth will hit it. But if you're going there with the same lure for a fish that whose mouth is not too big, you're out of the strike zone, right? Your chances of catching that fish just went down drastically. So when you come to the channel and you ask me, what should I use for these fish, right? One of the 38 fish in the description of the video, this is the answer that I'm going to give you, right? What I just talked about, for this part of the video. Finally, before I end the information portion of this live stream, and I just do a quick Q&A, we're going to talk about the last question that I gave at the beginning of this video, which is related to advanced techniques, right? And it has to do with the question that people always ask me, Leo, so I chose one of the species, to catch, and I am not able to catch it. I see the fish right there, but I just don't know what to do. When it comes to those type of circumstances, right, and we have already taken in consideration everything that I spoke about in this live stream, that is when you have to employ some advanced techniques, all right? Now, I would like to emphasize that these advanced techniques, they are not credible when it comes to the books, all right? These techniques are my own techniques that I have used in the past, I have devised in the past, okay? They are techniques that have worked for me. I'm not saying that these techniques are going to work for you. The books usually don't talk about them. Not a lot of people know about them, all right? But I think it really all boils down to common sense. So the first thing is the free-falling approach. I've talked about this in previous live streams. When the fish is not hitting, even when you are using the most finesse approach around you, and even when, you already took in consideration the fishing pressure, you already took in consideration that people come to your local body of water, right, and do catch photo release, you got the fish right in front of you, you have been trying a lot of different things and it didn't work, that's when you should try the free falling approach. That is the advanced technique number 1. And all right, you may look at me and just be like, well, Leo, free falling approach, that sounds so lame, you know, that sounds like something that anyone would do, right? You would think so, right? I mean, it's so common sense because free falling, it comes from physics, right? When you study physics and you have to draw a free body diagram, it is just a diagram attached to nothing, right? You want it to be as natural as possible. So when you do the free falling approach, it is the same concept. You want to give something to the fish that looks as natural as it can possibly be. If you put a crankbait down there and you just stopped it in mid-water, the crankbait is going to start fluttering up. Does that look natural in the eyes of the fish? Something coming from down to up? Depends on the species, right? But we are talking about the Centrarchidae here. And one of the most natural approaches when it comes to modern nature is that food will always come from the sky. Food will fall from the trees into the water and they start to sink, which is why the free falling approach is so effective. If you have a fish right in front of you who's not biting, right? And as I said, fishing pressure is there. You took everything in consideration. It is about time for you to, just go real and do the free falling. One hook, the smallest hook that you can afford to use for that species of fish. Once again, adapt it to the species that you want to target with some bait or some lure that is going to give the most natural presentation for whatever that you are going to target. When it comes to bass, for example, a wacky rigged Senko, right, falling in the water is one of the most natural approach. Why do you think that it is so effective, right? Gary Yamamoto thought about this for years, and then finally came out like, oh, wacky rig, It is just something that falls in the water, it starts falling down, and it is a lure. It is not alive, but it's got a wobbling action. And the extra amount of salt in the lure increases its density, which, by the way, right, more density sinks faster, and the fish sees that. And it's just like, whoa, that thing looks alive, looks like it just fell from the sky. I'm gonna hit it. You use a little fluorocarbon leader, right, which is a line that has an index of refraction very close to the index of refraction of water, which means that a light scatters out of it less, which means that it's more imperceptible to the fish, and that fish may just hit that. But if you have tried every lure free falling and then that approach didn't work yet, I recommend you to put live bait on. And nothing out there is going to beat a live creature free falling into the water. Let me tell you something. If you throw a live creature into the water, free falling, and the species that you are targeting did not eat that on the fall, that's when you go to the other two advanced techniques that I'm going to give you right now, okay? But hopefully you won't need those, because with this free falling approach, you will have caught your fish already, okay? But all right, let's say that it turned out to be true. Let's say that the fish that you were trying to catch is really, really, really hard to catch, man. You've used the free falling approach. You have done the basics of the basics. You have put a worm down there. You free falled it, and the fish didn't eat it. What do? Well, second thing that you can do is start a feeding frenzy. This is the advanced technique number 2. And there are 2 ways of starting a feeding frenzy. The first, of course, is chumming. If it is legal to chum in your state, if it is legal to throw things for fish to eat, just throw a bunch of food in front of them and mask your hook with whatever you were throwing down there and put it in front of the fish. And sometimes the fish starts to get the chum. They think it is natural, Oh my God, free food. And suddenly they get to your hook. You hook up that fish. The second thing that you can do to start a feeding frenzy is not even chumming, right? But this advanced technique, this part of the technique only works if there are other fish around the area. It is to use another species of fish to start a feeding frenzy. And this is why is this an advanced technique? Don't ask me, because a lot of people don't know how to do it. Let's say you have a largemouth bass, okay? And you probably have experienced this before, by the way. Let's say you have a largemouth bass or a smallmouth bass, okay, in a certain area, and that fish is huge, man. That fish is like the trophy fish of the place that you are fishing right now. And it doesn't matter what you throw in front of that fish is just not eating it. It's just not eating it. But let's say you are in a situation where you have that trophy fish just there, and then you have a bunch of other species around that fish just swimming around, you know? So let's say we got the bass there, the 6-pounder bass, and then we have a few panfish, a few sunfish who are, you know, is swimming around there, right? We're talking specifically about the Centrarchidae family right now. If we were not talking about the Centrarchidae family, I would give you some saltwater examples. But let's focus on the Centrarchidae. You got some sunfish over there and that trophy bass. Let me tell you something. That's the time for you to tie a full night crawler on a hook that is bigger than what the panfish can handle. So if you got some panfish around the area there, right, and some bluegill, I don't know, some red breast, man, green sunfish, right, just tie on like a 1-aught hook, man, a 2-aught hook, some type of hook that you just know it is going to be impossible for those sunfish to get. All right, tie on the whole worm, thread the whole worm on the hook, and just throw it down there, free falling. Once again, free falling. The panfish are going to be all over that worm. All right, and I always make sure to tie the worm in a certain way that, you know, the bottom of the worm, the tail, is always hanging so that the little sunfish can actually go to the tail of the worm and sometimes even get a nibble, you know, but they won't be able to get the whole thing out of the hook because it's a big ass hook, right? That's how you start a feeding frenzy. And that is exactly when that trophy fish right there is going to kind of, you know, get a little bit soft on you. Once that big fish, it starts to notice that the small fish are nibbling on that, the big fish will realize, man, that is real food. You know, those little fish, they're going for it. He will want to go there and fish, as opportunistic as they are, he will want to go there and get that bait. Now, let me tell you something I can't emphasize in my life, how many times I have gotten fish like that. There's just a fish there that won't bite on anything. But as soon as you start a feeding frenzy, that fish gets interested, and that's how you catch it. We're talking about the Centrarchidae family here, so I gave you guys a bass example. But let me just give you a saltwater example that happened to me in Florida. There was one plainhead filefish down in Florida that I really, really wanted to catch. But that plainhead filefish just, it wouldn't touch my bait. I would free fall right in front of its face, a squid, a whole squid head, and it wouldn't look at it. It wouldn't do anything. But as soon as I found a school of sergeant major and I threw that squid head in front of the school of the sergeant major, I noticed something. That freaking plainhead, you know, filefish, it started to moving towards the sergeant major, and when the sergeant major was getting the squid, it started to nibble on it. And that's when I started to realize, oh boy, you know, I adapted the size of the hook just enough so that I would be able to hook that fish and not the sergeant major. Sergeant major got smallmouths, filefish got smallmouths. It was a tricky thing to do. It took me 1 hour and 20 minutes, so 80 minutes total, 1 hour and 20 minutes to catch that fish. And I have that fish photo somewhere on my social media, but it took a lot of effort. But without this advanced technique, believe me, that day, I wouldn't be able to have added the plainhead filefish to my species list, okay? And then finally, right, the last technique, which is quite obvious to everything that we have been talking about here, right, is just to put a whole worm on. You know, just go. A lot of people like to save on the bait. You know, save on the bait, man. I don't want to put the whole thing on. You know, I just gotta put half or something. No, man, put the whole thing on. Let me tell you something, all right? Throw it out there, free fall, and even when it sinks all the way down, sometimes it is the movement of the natural bait that gets the fish closer, attracts it, and entices it to bite, all right? So these are the three advanced techniques that I wanted to tell you guys about it. This is really like desperate circumstances. Okay, you only do this kind of stuff when you find a fish that is really, really stubborn and does not want to bite, which is, of course, why I emphasized on live bait over lures. You may be able to entice a bass, for example, to bite on a wacky rig Senko, but ultimately, at the end of the day, right, you will catch things on live bait more than lures. All right, it's just how nature works. I understand that there are some type of anglers out there that only use lures, right? So they won't attempt to do this kind of stuff. And that is absolutely fine. But I'm just putting this information out there just in case one day, you know, you want to give it a try. And there's a story about what I just said, right? There's a story about this too, okay? One rod motor fishing. This was back in 2012 or 2013. I have never seen Mike Shell, one rod motor fishing, until that day is switched from a lure to live bait. All right. But it was the one day that we were at Haddon Lake and we saw this spawning largemouth bass in the range of like 6 pounds, just sitting there right next to the bed, right? And we were trying everything. I mean, we took everything in consideration. I don't know if that fish was caught and released already, but that fish wasn't biting on anything. So I just gave the idea, right? And I said, how about we just throw a night crawler down there, right? And, put it in front of its face and see if the fish hits. And Michael Shell, one rod, one fishing, he's all about the lures at that time, at least, all right? He's all about the lures, man. As a bass angler, it was his gig to food the fish, into biting the lures, right? But let me tell you something, man. That was the one day that I saw him put that down. He just told me, Leo, just give me a worm. Come on, man. Just give me a worm. So he gave up, man. So as much as I always tell people, right? You may be an angler who only uses lures, and I totally respect that. But there may be that moment one day that you see that one fish out there that you really, really want to catch. And you know that you won't have a second opportunity at catching that fish. Would you really stick to your ideals, or would you try something that may be able to catch the fish? The thing that he did that day, I find it absolutely no shame, because I would have done the same thing. If I see a species of fish out there that I don't have, all right, and I want to catch it, I will do whatever it takes to catch that fish. So this is pretty much what I wanted to cover in this live stream. I planned this live stream to be only the information part of this live stream to be in the range of 2 hours, because it was a lot of information, right? It was about the fish species, then it was about the scientific method and history, then it was about fish behavior, then it was about fishing equipment, and then it was about advanced techniques, right? And I tried to generalize this live stream as much as possible. So I'm actually quite happy that I am 13 minutes. Wait, am I 13 minutes? No, I'm way more than that, right? We started this live stream at 7:30, so 9:30 would be 2 hours. Oh man, we're on top of our games here. I probably talked real fast, didn't I? Holy moly, dude. So this is all the information portion of this live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned a lot. And finally, we gotta get started on the Q&A and just fool around for a little bit. All right. I saw that we got a bunch of donations here on the Google Hangouts chat box. Let me run through those real quick. Although I did mention here in the description of the video, okay, that donations are appreciated. However, I will not go through messages that are irrelevant to this live streams. So hopefully, it is not a question that is totally relevant, because if it is for this live stream, I am going to skip it. Now, of course, if you made a donation, the question's there, you always have the opportunity of emailing me with the same question, and I will be more than glad to answer it in private, all right? If it is irrelevant to this live stream. For folks who are using the Google Hangouts chat box, this is the time that you guys can ask questions to, as far as it is relevant to this live stream. Dang, son, I'm losing even the vocabulary here. So this is the time that you can ask me things, okay? And after that, I'm just gonna turn it off. So let me get started here and see what we got. Terrence Davis made a donation here. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Terrence says, Leo dropping that elementary science on them. Hell yeah, son. You know, there's a lot of things that you got to know to become a good angler, right? I mean, it is so true. Have you ever thought for yourself, what type of angler do you want to become? You know what I'm saying? And this type of live stream where I give you so much information, right? Information that sometimes you can't find on the books. This is for you to improve as an angler, not just as a bass angler, not just as a panfish angler or an angler who wants to catch some Centrarchidae species of fish. But this is the type of, what type of angler do you want to become? Let me tell you something. As I have emphasized in the beginning of this live stream, at the beginning of this live stream, if you are the type of angler who is always asking questions, reaching answers, that gives you even more questions, and you are always on that quest for knowledge, following the scientific method, and proving that the things that you do indeed work, you are going to be better than the rest of the folks out there who do not do that. There is a difference between being a weekend angler and an angler who's constantly getting out of his or her comfort zone, doing different things, learning new techniques, studying more about fish. It makes all the difference in the world. Excuse me. Eric made a donation here too. I appreciate it. His question is not really relevant to this live stream, so I'm gonna skip it. But Eric, please feel free to email me any question that you want. I'll make sure to answer it. Okay? He was talking about give a tour of my fishing stuff, back there. Oh wow, we got a donation here from my friend Don Garvey. He stopped by, to watch the live stream. I appreciate it. I hope he's doing well. And he just asked me, "Hey Leo, how are you doing, buddy?" I'm doing great. We're rolling on this live stream, man, and it's a lot of knowledge that I'm sharing with folks out here. So I hope folks are enjoying as well. Let me go all the way down here. We got a question, a donation by Griff Johnson. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the love and support. And once again, his question is irrelevant to this live stream, so I'm not going to answer it. He was asking, what should I use for trout fishing in a pond in Ohio? Let's save that one for when I, do a lecture live stream on trout. Yeah, which, by the way, I just did a series on the channel. You guys should watch that. Let me go. Let me go down here. We got catfish and carp who stopped by. That's very interesting, man. I need to go micro fishing with you. Yeah, you do. It's too bad the drive is horrible. We got. I'm getting down here, folks. Don't worry. I'm getting to your questions. All right, man. I'm gonna get there. I'm just scrolling down. We got another donation by Dean O'Neill. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And once again, it was a comment about trout, irrelevant, so I'm going to skip, but you are very welcome. And White Shadow CV, finally, I got all the way down here. This is the last donation that we got here. And he says, thank you very much, by the way, Chris. I appreciate it. And he says, I love everything that you do and just wanted to ask, what is your favorite panfish? And do you bad fish for bass? That's actually a very good question, and relevant to the topic. That's good. That's real good. So when it comes to pan fishing, I don't really have a favorite species. I think out of the, all the species that I listed here in the description of the video, my goal right now, as you can see, right, I caught only 16 out of 38. So my goal is really to catch the other 22. In which is it 22? Yeah, 22. I'm a little bit out of my mind tonight. Is to catch the other 22, and that is going to be extremely hard to do. But I would say that all those 22 species of fish right now are my favorite. This is how I usually tell people. What I usually tell people on my live streams and on my social media. A species of fish that I have not caught yet is always my favorite. And once I catch that species of fish, then it just becomes, a regular, right? I just skip and I go forward. Now, to the question of do you bed fish for bass? That is a very good question. In Pennsylvania, in the state of Pennsylvania, it is illegal to fish for bedding bass. It is in the regulations, it is in the booklet. It says, it clearly states that if you see a bed and you throw your stuff there multiple times to attempt to catch that fish, it is illegal and you will get fined if there's a game warden around. So first and foremost, I would like to indicate in this live stream, before targeting batting bass around your stage, always make sure to read the rules and regulations and make sure that it is legal to do in your stage. Now, after you do that, you need to think about the question, what is the impact of you catching batting bass? That is extremely important. So for example, up here in the northeast portion of the country, we don't have a lot of largemouth bass compared to the south, compared to Texas, for example, right? So when the bass are spawning around here, people who are more into conservation, catch, photo, release, and people who want, future populations of bass to get higher, they tend to catch and they tend to not target batting bass at all. They just, the closed season is there. They just leave the fish alone, and once it gets from spawn to post spawn, they go there and they catch it. Now, down in the south, where you have a huge population of bass, people tend to catch batting bass all the time because they are not so concerned about the population numbers down there. So this is a topic for debate. Personally, I don't like to target batting bass. But again, it really depends on the circumstances. It depends on the amount, the population, the quality of fish in a certain body of water. If I go down to Texas and I see batting bass, and I got a place that is filled with bass, yeah, I'll fish for some batting bass. But if I am in a lake where there's only 4 largemouth bass in the entire lake, and there's only 2 beds, right? And I'm not going to do it because I know that after I catch those fish in the beds, it is going to influence the outcome of the breeding season, right? So if I want that population to thrive and the numbers to go up, I don't want that human impact to be there. It is really as simple as that. F60W is asking, what water temperature range do largemouth spawn? So that is a question that I actually covered in one of my previous live streams, right? It is all the members of the Centrarchidae family are warm water fish. So as far as temperatures get in the range of 50s to 60s, they really start spawning for most species. Okay, some species down there, they have very, very little research done on them, especially, for example, the species of sunfish in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, or the Sacramento perch, right, in California. So, but when it comes to the bass, once it gets to the 50s and 60s, check with your state website. I always tell people, you want to find out when they are spawning, check with your state regulations, because most state regulations do not allow you to take bass when they're spawning, right? So as far as you see that little closed season, you will know that that is the time when bass are spawning. John Bernard Davis is asking, which one of the 22 fish do you want to catch the most? I don't have a preference, to tell you the truth. I am all about catching all of them. So one by one, I'm just going to cross it out of the list. Now, of course, in terms of difficulty, there's always that. There are some species that are more difficult to catch, right? And some that are easier to catch. That is not to say that it has to do with the behavior of the fish itself, but sometimes it has to do with the environment and the behavior of the fish. Such as that, one of the previous videos here on the channel, I was trying for 2 hours to catch a black-banded sunfish, and that didn't happen. So when you ask me this question, which one of those 22 do you want to catch the most? I will just give you the answer that I would want to catch the most difficult ones first and get it out of the way. This is the kind of person I am. The more difficult it is, and I catch that species of fish, oh man, I'm going to be delighted because I just know that, it is tough to catch. This usually applies for micro species that are extremely hard to catch because their mouths are just so small and they are spooked very easily, or for species of fish that are just extremely rare in the wild. Those are the species of fish that sometimes in a body of water, there's very few of them. So of course, as a life lister and as a multi-species angler, those are the types of fish that you want to catch first. Not to mention that you just never know what is going to happen with a population of fish in the future. So if you have, for example, a species of fish out there that has a very limited number in terms of population, you definitely want to catch those nowadays, right now, because in the future, the number, sadly, and most likely, will only going to decline. Let me see here. I'm looking for other questions, but once again, I'm scrolling to the chat and making sure that those questions are relevant to the topic that we're talking about tonight. So as far as it is about the Centrarchidae or any of the species down there, I will answer it. Chris Baker is asking, do smallmouth hang around in the summer? Yes, and once again, I would like to emphasize what we talked during the behavior portion of this video. Every time you talk about summer as a season, just don't forget, the most important thing is not that the season is summer. The most important thing is to know the water temperature of where you are, right? That is summer. Summer in different places have different ranges for water temperature. This is what I'm trying to say. And that is extremely important because it is based on water temperature that eventually you find out if the smallies that you are looking for are pre-spawn, spawn, or post-spawn. They spawn at different times of the year, at different times around the country, at different times around the world. So that is what you need to find out about, okay? Digital Sphinx is asking here. So he says, I have 4-pound mono and 6-pound fluoro. Which one is best for trout or panfish and why? Well, since we're not talking about trout here, I'm just going to remove trout of the mix. But I will gladly talk about the panfish. And it is a good question that you pose over here, okay? And that question is, should the test line of the line matter more than the type of line? And this is something, I mean, this is a topic for discussion because as you guys know, the line pound test, right? As it goes higher, so does the visibility of the line in the water. And that because, the diameter of the line increases. That's why if you are using 20 pounds mono versus 12 pounds mono in front of a fish that is extremely finicky, with 12 pounds mono, your chances of catching that fish will increase because as the diameter of the line decreases, right, so does the scattering of the line. And even though that fish still notices the line in the water, it will notice it less than the 20 pounds. So in this kind of question, when you ask me this way, I would definitely have to tell you that when it comes to the type of line and the test line, you should take the type of line in consideration first, especially if we're talking about high pressure bodies of water with finicky fish. And that is because even though you have a 6-pound mono, and a 4-pound mono and a 6-pound fluoro, the fluorocarbon is just, so much more imperceptible in front of the fish in comparison to the monofilament. And that has to do with the topic that I, talked about here on the live stream, right? That the index of refraction of the fluorocarbon in relationship to the water is very close because of the material that is used to make the fluorocarbon. This is all about physics, right? Fluorocarbon will never be 100% invisible under the water. And that's because right now, as technology stands, physicists and engineers and material scientists, they haven't found a material yet that can match the index of refraction of the water. But what you folks need to know is that when you are in a certain medium, for example, the air or the water, in this case, the water, and you see an object in that medium, in this case, the fluorocarbon, if that object has an index of refraction very, very close to the medium, it's going to be very, very imperceptible to you, almost as if it was invisible. And this is how it happens with the fish. And that's why I will have to say, when it comes to your question right here, I would definitely use the 6-pound fluoro. And if you don't believe in what I'm saying, you can go out there yourself, of course. That is the hypothesis. Go out and test it out. Do a series of experimentations or observations. Do a little time limit at the same spot, different days, right? Try to keep some days apart from the 2 days that you fish there, and one day go there with a 4-pound mono, and then wait a week, go back there again, and try the 6-pound fluoro and see how many fish you catch in those 2 fishing sessions at the same time limit. Make sure that you choose a spot that nobody else goes fishing at, so that your chances of catching the fish are as equal as possible, right? After all, fishing is a sport that has so many variables. You can never get all the variables right. You can only, just like physics, you can get very, very close approximations as answers, but you can never get the exact answer. So, you can always go out there and test it yourself. Anthony Norris is asking, what panfish local to the US have you not caught yet? Well, I think out of all the Centrarchidae here that is listed in the description of the video, I believe that all 22 of them, that I haven't caught yet, are local to the US, just different parts of the country. So, for me to catch those 22, yes, I would have to travel quite a bit around the country pursuing all the different species in the Centrarchidae family. But, hopefully it will happen one day. The day that it happens, that I have caught all 38 of them, and hopefully by that time it's going to remain 38, I'll definitely bring a video here on the channel, all right? T-Bassing is asking, what is the best tasting panfish in your opinion? That is actually a very good question, especially for people who like to eat panfish, right? Panfish is a prized fish here in the United States of America. I haven't really talked about the topic of consuming panfish, but people do love to eat their fish, especially down in the South. Such is that every state around this country has a crew and limit when it comes to different species of sunfish out there, right? Usually it is divided by just the regular sunfish, the bluegill, green sunfish, red breast, right? They're all like packed together. And then you have some other regulations for like the black crappie, white crappie, and hybrids. And then you have other regulations for the bass. But I mean, when it comes to flavor, I've eaten bass before. I've eaten bluegill and the regular panfish before, and I've eaten black crappie before. And I think when it comes to taste, it is just a matter of personal preference. So I'm just gonna give you my opinion on it. I just like the crappie the most. This is what I like to eat the most when it comes to the Centrarchidae family. Okay, so I mean, some people may not agree with me, and they may like the bluegill, but for me, it is definitely the crappie. And just to use this as an example, sometimes you go to the Asian markets, and they have like a largemouth bass for sale, and it is like $12 a pound. So I mean, does that mean that the Asians value the bass meat so much to be like $12 a pound? You see what I'm saying? So yeah, it's just a matter of personal preference, but I've definitely eaten crappie before, and I really, really like it. So, I would love to continue this live stream and answer more questions. However, I feel like I'm losing my voice. I mean, if you guys take the length of this live stream in consideration and the amount of words that I have said here, all ad lib, you will probably come to the conclusion that, I have talked a lot in this live stream. It was very energy draining. So I got to go back to my phone right now. I'm going to take a shower because, I'm talking so much that I am sweating. This is how bad it is. Like, you talk a lot when you start sweating from talking, you know? So I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. All right. I just, once again, I'm just gonna give a brief summary of what went through in this live stream, and later it's going to be released in the channel. I will be able to give you guys the times of everything that we discussed, because like I mentioned previously, this live stream is going to be used for future references and future questions here on the YouTube platform and on social media, so that I will have never ever talk about this topic again. We started this live stream at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's been running for about 1.5 hours. I started this live stream by giving folks pretty much an introduction to all the different species of fish in the Centrarchidae family. They are in the description of the video. I give emphasis to the fact that 4 species of fish in this family have been found only in 2013. They have been studied, researched, and separated. From there, we went to the topic of the scientific method, because I told folks that you would need the scientific method to answer the questions that I imposed in this live stream. So I gave folks a brief history of, the Enlightenment, and we talked a little bit about Sir Francis Bacon and the scientific method, hypothesis, experimentation, and theory. After that, finally, we started talking about the Centrarchidae family. I talked a little bit about fishing behavior. I emphasized that folks should go, before going out there to wet their lines, they should do their research when it comes to how exactly the fish that they want to target behave. I touched upon the topics of where they feed and where they live. I talked about the different spawning seasons of the year, right? So pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn. I talked a little bit about the human impact on those fish in terms of behavior, fishing pressure, catch, photo, release. Then we went to talk in this live stream about fishing gear to target the different species of fish in the in the Centrarchidae family. I divided all those fish in 3 different categories: bass, panfish, and micro species. And we talked a little bit about that. And finally, I gave all the folks here on the live stream a little bit about my advanced techniques. That part, I'll just leave it for you guys to scroll back and watch it, all right? I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I'm going to probably publish this live stream tomorrow, April 22nd. I will do more lecture live streams in the future, because I feel that this is a good way to put the information out there and just use it as a reference. I mean, ultimately, the fact is I am only one human being. I am only one individual running this YouTube channel, right? And I won't be able in the future. This is the fact. I won't be able in the future to answer every DM, every YouTube comment, every Snapchat, every anything. And that's why I really thought for myself when I decided I really need these live streams, because when people ask me something, I don't want to be rude to not be able to answer that on the go. So I can just give them the hyperlink of the live stream and give them the minute, the time. Just go to the live stream right here and go to 1:48:47. All right, your answer is right there, and that's why I decided to do this series. All right, so I hope you folks enjoyed this live stream. I hope you have learned a lot. This is the purpose of this live stream. Okay, timelines, folks. I will bring you guys another video in 2 days. Until then, take it easy, and I hope you catch a lot